cellular organelles that are basic to life itself. We can't hope for natural selection to explain how something this grand came into existence. It is far beyond the technology found, for example, in my BlackBerry Storm over on my table over there, or the cell phone that you have with you, and far beyond anything that we can do even with our most advanced technology today. Here we have a tremendously simplified graphic of protein synthesis in the cell using DNA, RNA polymerase, messenger RNA, transfer RNA, ribosomes, etc. Again, the complexity of this mechanism is mind-boggling. This is not, as Mr. Barker has erroneously claimed in the past, similar to complex crystals or wind-shaped sand dunes. No, this is specific informational complexity on a level that rivals our best computers and on a physical scale so infinitesimal we are left in awestruck wonder every time we look into our own selves. Amazingly, Mr. Barker can look at this clear informational complexity and tell us that this is not evidence of an intelligent, wise designer. This is nothing more than the report one would make after a storm has passed through. What can explain such a willingness to reject such obvious evidence of purposeful, intentional, and intelligent design? There have been recent developments. One recent book that came out last year that is quite fascinating is entitled Why Us by James LeFanu. And he addresses what has happened since the decade of the brain and the Human Genome Project. And I thought this was very relevant to our debate this evening. He wrote, "Nonetheless, there must be a reason why those genome projects prove so uninformative about the form and attributes of living things, or why the decade of the brain should have fallen so far short of explaining the mind. There is a powerful impression that science has been looking in the wrong place, seeking to resolve questions whose answers lie somehow outside its domain." He continues by saying, "This is not just a matter of science not yet knowing all the facts. Rather, there is the sense that something of immense importance is missing that might transform the bare bones of genes into the wondrous diversity of the living world and the monotonous electrical firing of the neurons of the brain into the vast spectrum of sensations and ideas of the human mind. What might that missing element be?" One of the tragedies of modern Western academia has been the institutional establishment of a religious dogma that brooks no dissent, that being neo-Darwinian naturalistic materialism. These vital questions cannot even be asked by the dogmatic materialist. The answer must be in the genes. There can't be something different about mankind that gives rise to the mind. We have to be just like a tapeworm or like broccoli. Our religion says so. Long ago, Blaise Pascal, the brilliant mathematician and philosopher, said, "Reason's last step is the recognition that there are an infinite number of things which are beyond it. It is merely feeble if it does not go as far as to realize that." And reflecting those same thoughts, the Puritan John Flavel said, "I know there is nothing in the word or in the works of God that is repugnant to sound reason, but there are some things in both which are opposite to carnal reason, as well as above right reason. And therefore our reason never shows itself more unreasonable than in summoning those things to its bar which transcend its sphere and capacity." Now, I want to be very, very clear on one thing this evening. While our debate places you, the audience, in the position of judging, I would be remiss in a most severe way if I did not reject in the strongest possible terms the idea that we as creatures have the right to judge the existence of our Creator. The verdict of this debate was given when God said, "Let there be light." The issue tonight is whether we will live in accord with that verdict or not. So what is the reality in our closing moments of this opening statement? If your worldview cannot give a justification for why we are here tonight, laws of logic, reason, transcendent meaning, it should be rejected. If your worldview cannot accord with the reality of the world and human existence, it should be rejected. The triune God, as the timeless, unchanging creator of all things, gives meaning through his eternal decree to all things in space and time. We as creatures find our truest selves only when we are in the proper relationship to our Creator, so that our intellectual pursuits are undertaken under his lordship, where we as creatures have the tremendous privilege of thinking God's thoughts after him. This is the great irony of those who promote what they call free thought. Creatures who rebel against their own nature and who embrace dogmatic materialism are not free at all. They are bound to self-deception and as such are condemned to anything but free thought. Their worldview precludes a true, holistic, harmonious knowledge of God's creation around them. The Christian, however, is seeing himself or herself for what we are in reality, the creatures of a personal, eternal sovereign, can, from the peace that comes through faith in Jesus Christ, experience the fullness of our humanity as God intended us to, all to his glory. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. White. And just as we are honored to have with us Dr. White, so too are we honored to have Mr. Dan Barker. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Barker.
Thank you, Muhammad, and thank you, AAF, and thank you, navigators. Oh, by the way, I hate to break the news to you, but now that there's GPS, we don't need the navigators anymore. And thank you, James. It was I think it was 23 years ago. Do you think we would have recognized each other on the street today?
I've kept up with you, so yes.
Oh, okay. You would have recognized. You've been watching the intelligent design of the hairline.
All good men come out on top.
We have a national radio show, Free Thought Radio, that airs on Air America every week. And the joke that I told 2 weeks ago, the ship was sinking. The captain was nervous, and he yelled out, "Does anybody on board know how to pray?" And this one guy raised his hand and he said, "I do." And the captain said, "Great, because we're one life jacket short." Usually when I do these debates, they are general. Does God exist? Is a general God? And I argue, probably not. Did any of you see the bus signs that were on in the UK? There's probably no God, so stop worrying and enjoy your life, right? And that's what we have to do when we discuss the general concept of a God. Because there's probably an infinite number of definitions of a God, so you can't disprove them all. And so I'm not going to be discussing. In fact, tonight's debate, it doesn't have to depend on atheism or theism. There could be a Jew standing here debating the existence of the triune God. Or a Muslim could be standing here where I am. Or a Unitarian or some other religion, a Hindu. And so we're not arguing atheism tonight. We're arguing a specific God which has a specific definition. But let me just briefly touch on the general reasons why I am an atheist, because they are somewhat relevant. First of all, there is no evidence for a God. What you saw tonight is not evidence for a God. What you saw tonight is evidence for a current gap